Hello, this is Sajid Ajmal. I will be teaching you the courses, not exactly the courses, pardon me. I will be teaching you programming in C Sharp and the topics which I will be covering. Let me show you the topics I will be covering with you. And I ensure you guys that once you go through each and every section of this tutorial, you can easily create any console or web-based application with the information and knowledge you have gained from these tutorials. So I am associated with this company, Quick Start Intelligence, and I will try my best to teach you and make sure to survey the Cliff platform. And it's so much insightful and it contains a lot of information. You can find many different spaces which talks about uh, different development technologies and SharePoint and artificial intelligence, machine learning. You can find multiple videos. You can interact with the world's best IT experts, and you can post your questions. You can get answer, and if you need any answer in your real life projects, you can also get it from them. So just give me a moment and let me open up the document in which I will be explaining you the table of contents, in which we will uh, go step by step and pick one topic. And uh, once we are done with that specific topic, then I'm going to uh, perform some demonstration, because theoretically you can get your stuff from the internet from anywhere. So what you have to do is it's better when things are explained in a very layman's terminology. People get it very satisfactory. And I am sure there are multiple sites on the internet on which you can pretty much get information on this subject. But the way the people teach different courses is really different. So I will try my level best to explain in the most simplest and layman's terminology. And do let me know if you have any questions related to that, and I will be happy to answer that. So let's open up the document, the topics which we will be covering in this tutorial. All right. So this is a table of contents I have prepared for this tutorial, and the first thing which we will consider doing it will be the how to take user input and display it on the console window. You know, there it's really important that you can hard code each and everything in your programs and your applications, but in real life scenarios, the most important thing is users type their requirements and try to get their information from the user. So the best thing is to get the user input and play with it. So first thing we will be doing in this tutorial will be user input, and after that I will be going to explain you the concept of abstract classes and polymorphism. Then we will be covering data types. There are multiple data types for different scenarios. For instance, if you are creating a banking application, so variables in that data types we will use will be integer or decimal or float, depending upon your requirements. And interfaces are basically gaps and mechanisms. I'm just giving you a brief idea about these topics so you can get an idea what you will be learning in this tutorial. And I will be starting with my first topic, that is user input, at my next video. This video will only focus on the table of contents. And yeah, so interfaces are basically, for instance, you have one application a web-based application in which you have to record customers information, and on the other hand you have this uh, requirement of associating those customers with the vehicles they have purchased. So basically both are developed in different packages, different namespaces. So interfaces are basically a platform in which you provide them a communication medium in which both different applications or different packages can communicate with each other, though they are built in different namespaces and different packages, but in that way you can communicate with them. We will going to explore the math function, and the math function, you can, there are built-in numerous methods or different methods built in the Visual Studio IDE, which you can use in order to satisfy your requirements. We will be using that. Operator overloading, or there are two concepts. One concept is method overloading, and the other one is the method overriding. So I will be briefly explaining what is the difference between the two and how you can take advantage of this feature and this concept in your real life scenarios. Casting, what is casting? Casting basically is from, if you have, for instance, a variable of integer data type and you want to cast it into some other data type, so you can do the casting. There are two types of casting. One is explicit and implicit. We will go in details once we get to this topic. Apart from this, we have polymorphism and abstract classes. There are many times when you have to understand the uh, difference between the when you want to take the advantage of one variable or one class or one variable with respect to the other variable. For instance, if you have multiple amount of colors variables and you want to reference that variable into other variable, then you can use the concept of polymorphism. And abstract classes are simply the classes which provides a layout of the extended classes. Remember that abstract classes can never be instantiated. That's a major difference between the abstract class and the other classes. There are many different type of conditional operators, if else and switch cases and many others. So I will be explaining that as well. Operator overloading as mentioned. Oh, okay, let's skip this. I think that's two times I have written. My bad. Typos. Um, Switch, break, and continue. These are some conditional operators which you will be using in different scenarios. For instance, you cannot specify numerous amount of conditional conditions in your application by if and else. So in that case, the switch case comes up, and you can easily uh, use these information in your application. The while loop, for instance, if you have certain condition to meet and you want to check certain condition, for instance, that until and unless run this loop or iteration for specific number of time, you specify the condition in that variable, and in that way you can iterate based on the requirements you have specified. Enumerations are special kind of data types, uh, custom defined data types, in which you can define your own data types. As I have mentioned, there are multiple types of data types: string, integer, float, decimal floats, and variable character, and many others. So via enumerations, you can define your own data type. The do while loop, it comes handy when you want to execute your condition one time and then check the condition that if this condition is met, then run the iteration second time. In that scenario, do while comes handy. Um, After that, we have structs, special type of data structures, similar to classes, but structs don't have any constructors in them, but classes does have. And the for loop, the for loop is usually so the for loop is basically used when you want to initialize certain variable and compare the variable with number of times you want to run the iteration. And based on the structure of the for loop, which I will be explaining you in detail, how you can increment the variable and apply the for loop mechanism in your applications. Anonymous methods, there are multiple type of anonymous methods which you can define in your applications. We will be discussing that as well. For each is basically used for iterating in the character section. For instance, if you have an array, and in that array, in each index, you want to iterate through the each index which variable contains which characters, then you can iterate through the for each section. Lambda expressions, we will go in detail in the next few videos what they are used for. And there are multiple string functions, for instance, string input output, string trimming, concatenation. We will be exploring that as well. File input output, very important topic in which you will learn eventually that you will be able to extract certain amount of information from any file, whether Excel or Notepad or Word or any database file, and extract that information and output the information into your console application. And once you are done with that, you can do multiple amount of things based on your requirements. Formatting strings, as I have told you, we can concatenate or format the strings as per our requirements. We will exploring that as well. The string builder class is a feature provided by the Visual Studio IDE, and you can use the string builder class to write all of your string related queries. And array functions are used to store the data into the array and iterate in order to store the large amount of data. We will be exploring what is list, what is array list. I forgot to mention over here. Let's put down array list as well. And exception handling, the best way to uh, pardon me, I'm having some throat infection and not feeling well, but still, I'm good to go and teach you. String basically, exception handling is used because there are times when your application crashes, and in order to provide a easy way out, a more presentable manner that to the user that your application is crashed, rather than showing an error which is which cannot be understood by the end user, you manage and do the exception handling of that error and display the common statement or uh, message to the user that this error is arise due to this issue. So we will be exploring that as well, what are try and catch, and finally, and how you can implement the exception handling in your applications. Classes and objects, we will be exploring classes and objects in detail. What are classes, what are blueprints, and how many type of classes are there, and what you can how you can use your objects in your application. uh, Getters and setters, these are properties which you can define in your methods. For instance, get or set, in order to get some information from any class or variable, you can specify the get set property. Constructors are basically for initialization purposes, which is usually run when the application is run in the not on the compile time but on the runtime. We will be exploring that as well. And what are static functions? What are static classes? Pardon me, not functions, static methods. What are static methods and static classes? And the class methods, overloading methods, as I mentioned earlier, overriding methods and overloading methods. What's the difference between the two, and how you can incorporate that functionality in your applications? Initialization, inheritance, very important topic, because certain times when you have 5,000 line of code and you want to get some functionality of your base class into your child classes, you don't have to write the code again and again just to provide some simplicity and less complexity in your code. You just inherit some features of your previous classes, methods or variables or objects, and simply use them in your child classes. Call superclass methods, how you can access the base class methods in your child classes, and what's the advantage of using this that superclass methods. We will be exploring that as well. And override class methods, there are multiple methods in classes which you can use, because override, for instance, if we have a uh, string in dot override method, and you want to override the method based on your requirement, you can use that as well. So this was it from my side, and I hope you will be learning a lot, not unlike others, in a very simple manner. So hope you have a very fun-filled journey, and see you soon in your next video. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Thank you.